Have you ever really stopped to think about the difference between, say, a rock and a rose, or a river and the fish swimming in it? I mean, it seems pretty obvious, right? One's alive, one isn't. But when you really start to dig into the science, that line between living and non-living it gets surprisingly blurry. So let's dive in and explore the actual chemical recipe that makes life, well, life.
All right, so let's start with the biggest mystery of all. How do scientists even define life? You'd think that would be a settled question, but honestly, it's way harder to pin down than you might imagine.
And to show you just how tricky this is, let's take a look at a classic brain teaser. Just picture a flickering flame. It grows, right? It consumes fuel, it needs oxygen, it even seems to dance and react. So, is fire alive? And here's where it gets really weird. When you put them side by side, fire actually ticks a lot of the boxes. It grows, it uses energy, it responds to its environment, just like a living thing. But it fails on two absolutely critical points. It has no cells, no structure, and it has no genetic blueprint, no DNA. It's an amazing chemical reaction for sure, but it's not biology.
This little thought experiment leads us right to the biologist's official checklist for life. Generally speaking, for something to be considered alive, it's got to do these 5 things. It has to grow, it has to reproduce, it needs to maintain a stable internal environment. That's a fancy word, homeostasis. It has to respond to the world around it, and it has to process energy to power itself.
But nature loves to throw a curveball. Even this neat little list has problems. Just take a mule. I mean, a mule is clearly alive, right? It's walking, breathing, eating, but it's sterile. It can't reproduce. This is called the mule paradox, and it's a perfect example of how even our best definitions have these fascinating fuzzy edges.
So, to get a better answer, we have to go deeper. We need to zoom in, past the biological properties, and look at the chemical foundation. Because the secret to what makes something alive isn't just about what it does, it's about what it's made of.
And this is where my mind is just blown every time I see it. Get this. When you break down any living thing on this planet, I don't care if it's a whale, a mushroom, or the bacteria on your keyboard, a whopping 97% of its weight is made from just 6 chemical elements. Only 6.
And here they are, the big 6. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. A lot of people use the little acronym CHNOPS to remember them. These 6 elements are, quite literally, the ingredients in the recipe for all life on Earth.
But even within this elite group of 6, there is one undisputed champion. One element that is the absolute backbone, the scaffolding, the ultimate connector for everything. And that, of course, is carbon.
So what's carbon's superpower? Why is it so special? Well, think of it as the ultimate social networker of the elements. A single carbon atom can form 4 super strong, stable connections at the same time. This lets it link up with other carbon atoms to build these incredibly long chains, branches, and rings. And it also loves to connect with all the other key elements, creating this unbelievable molecular variety that life needs to exist. Okay, so if carbon atoms are our little Lego bricks, what are the amazing structures they build? Well, this is where we get into macromolecules, the giant molecules that do all the heavy lifting inside a cell.
The whole process starts with something called a monomer. It's just a sciencey word for a single basic molecular piece. It is one individual Lego brick. Simple as that. And you guessed it, when you start clicking those monomer bricks together, one after another in a long chain, you get a polymer. That's your complex Lego creation built from all those single repeating parts.
So, how does life actually build and break these chains? It's so elegant. It's beautiful. To connect 2 monomers together, the cell just removes a molecule of water. That's called dehydration synthesis. And to break a polymer back down into its individual pieces, it just does the opposite. It adds a water molecule. That's called hydrolysis. Build and break, just by moving water around. And that one simple trick, adding or removing water, gives us the 4 master molecules of life.
You get carbohydrates, which are great for quick energy and building things. You get proteins, which are basically the tiny machines that do everything in the cell. You get lipids or fats for long-term energy storage and cell walls. And of course, you get nucleic acids, like DNA, which is the actual blueprint for life itself.
Now, all this amazing chemical construction can't just happen in thin air. It needs a place to happen. It needs a liquid stage where all these molecules can swim around and interact with each other.
And that stage, that universal solvent, is water. And water isn't just some boring, passive background liquid. No way. It's an active player in the game of life. The fact that it's polar, meaning it acts like a tiny magnet, makes it perfect for dissolving things. And its ability to absorb a ton of heat helps you and me maintain a stable body temperature. It is absolutely essential for life as we know it.
Okay, so now that we're armed with all this chemistry, let's zoom back out and come full circle. Let's revisit that fundamental question. What is life? Can all this chemistry help us finally draw a clear line in the sand?
Well, let's look at the ultimate test case, the virus. On the one hand, it has genetic material, which is a huge check in the alive column. It's made of the right stuff, proteins and nucleic acids, but it has zero machinery of its own to reproduce. It's basically a piece of code that has to hijack a living cell to make copies of itself. So, is it alive? Scientists are still arguing about it. And this brings us to a final, really deep thought from the philosopher Carol Cleland. She points out that maybe our whole definition of life is fundamentally biased. Think about it. Every single living thing we have ever studied on Earth is related. We all come from the same family tree, from a single common ancestor. We're trying to define this universal concept, life, by studying a sample size of 1.
Which leaves us with this huge, provocative question to chew on. We've seen just how critical carbon and water are for every form of life we know. But is that the only way to do it? Could there be life out there, somewhere else in the universe, built on a completely different chemical foundation? It's a question that pushes the very limits of what we think we know, and it makes you wonder what else might be possible.